Okay, I'm a fan of a guy who is running for Congress in California, and only because of the things I have heard about him, the little I have read about him. I have not spoken to him except for a few minutes at Free Pack, and invited him on the program and want to get him here because from what I do know of him, I think he is another one that is being prayed into office. Another guy who is exactly the kind of warrior who truly gets it, because Igor Birman was born in the Soviet Union. He's been an American for 20 years now and knows what the American dream is, and he joins us now, running for Congress in California's 7th District, suburbs of Sacramento. Igor, how are you, sir?
Glenn, good to be on the show. I'm doing great.
Tell me the American dream. What is it?
Well, I'm living it, Glenn. I watched my parents not only struggle and risk their lives to flee the Soviet Union, but come here with absolutely nothing. No house, no jobs, no leads. And they flourished. 5 years after they came here, they were homeowners. And I flourished because I became an attorney and I became chief of staff to Congressman Tom McClintock. And all that came from absolutely nothing. And that's only possible here in America, no place else in the world.
So many of us have been concerned for a while of Marxist revolution and a slow slide into Marxism and to communism or whatever it ends up being. They called it, Stuart Chase called it System X back in the 1940s when communism and fascism suddenly gained a bad name. And he's the guy who coined the phrase, the New Deal. I don't know what it looks like in the end, but it looks an awful lot like the former Soviet Union, does it not?
Well, you know, it's funny. I told the crowd at FreePack, having lived in the Soviet Union and now finding myself living under President Barack Obama and leaders like, and that's said in jest, Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, who are pushing policies like Obamacare, and government spying and intimidation, harassment on us. Can you blame me for feeling like I've been down this road before?
What is it that you think is the most disturbing thing that Americans just... what is the first thing that you say we have to pay attention to right now?
Well, it's the increasingly fast transfer of our most basic, most intimate decisions from we the people to we the government. And that pace is accelerating. And at some point, we're going to come to a very important moment where government is going to be making such a large portion of our day-to-day decisions from the cradle to the grave, where we're in danger of losing our freedom. And that's why I'm running for Congress, because I know that going down that road does not end well.
Do you have any farmland in your district?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What do you think about what the EPA is doing now to farmers?
Well, it's, two absolutely idiotic policies masquerading as science. First of all, these federal regulations stopped us from storing water and building storage projects so that when we do have wet years, that water, instead of being stored for use in dry years, just runs off into the ocean. And second of all, instead of actually keeping the water that we do store, what little we store for farmers and for families, and to produce this breadbasket that California used to be, now we flush that water out to the ocean for the pleasure of a 3-inch fish called a Delta smelt. And what's worse is I'm running against a Republican, and this is a Republican who at least claims to be one, who wrote a bill and championed it on the House floor to make the EPA a cabinet-level department, which means give them more power, which means give them more bureaucrats with which to go out and bully the American public.
Yeah, the guy who you're running against votes consistently for higher taxes, supported amnesty, Social Security benefits for illegals, wrote the bill that would make the EPA a cabinet position. If that's the GOP, who needs to go out and vote? Whoever gets in, it doesn't matter.
Well, it's scary stuff because so many in that Washington D.C. have lost their courage, and this election is probably the brightest contrast between a constitutional conservative and the most liberal Republican running for office in America today.
How are the polls?
I think the results are going to be very, very telling about not just the direction of the Republican Party, but the direction of America. Because if we fail to elect leaders who believe in the Constitution, it's going to be very tough to recover our freedoms.
Igor, I tell you, that's the main thing I really think this is I keep feeling like, okay, well, this is our last chance. But I don't know when we finally hit that. But this is a big one. This fall, if we don't, where we have good choices, where, for instance, you against, how do you say his last name? Ose?
Ose is the Republican. Who would make Democrats blush.
Right. When we have a real choice between these guys, when we have a choice of you or Doug, we have a choice of Mitch McConnell or Matt Bevin. If we really do go for the guy who wrote the EPA cabinet position, bill, and Mitch McConnell, we get what we deserve.
Well, that is true. That is one of the pitfalls of living in a free society, and you're right. Look, we don't know when that final political battle comes, but I can tell you that our courage should only grow, because we can only claim freedom as our future if we fight for it. And I was inspired thoroughly by my parents because I watched them fight for freedom from beyond the Iron Curtain against all odds, and they succeeded.
How did that? What was that?
My grandmother, who lived almost 70 years under the Iron Curtain, fight for it. She came here fully blind in both eyes at the age of 83, wanting nothing more than to become an American citizen. And she did it. She did it by listening to this old black tape player on which my dad had recorded questions and answers to the naturalization exam. And then she went and she passed it with flying colors, because, as she said, she wanted to die an American. And then she went and took that oath of a new citizen with me. And it only occurred to me when I went to work for Congressman Tom McClintock just how close the oath of a new citizen is to an oath of a new congressman. Both oaths reflect on supporting and defending the Constitution. How little does that oath mean to so many in Congress? And how much does that oath mean to a new citizen?
Let me talk to you about Ukraine here for a second. Putin sees how unbelievably weak we are. He knows we're not going to do anything. There are rumors going through the Ukraine now that pro-Russian mobs are stirring things up to make it look like a threat against Russia, and they're going to roll those tanks across the Ukraine. What do you think is going through the mind of Putin, and why should America care about this?
Well, first of all, I think Putin is stunned that in a referendum where the choices were yes to joining Russia or yes to joining Russia, yes to joining Russia only got 95% of the vote. But in all seriousness, look, I know a thing or two about KGB thugs. They searched our apartment. They threatened my family. They threatened their lives. They threatened their livelihoods. I know how they operate. Putin is a very dangerous individual, but Putin has a major weakness that we've failed to exploit because we've got leaders who don't know how to lead. Putin presides over an economy that is almost solely dependent on natural gas exports. We're sitting on enormous natural gas exports. Public policy, our own leaders like Obama, leaders like those Democrats in the House and the Senate, leaders like, quite frankly, Doug Ose, who at every opportunity vote against expanding our own domestic energy production. They stand in the way of us producing that natural gas, exporting that natural gas, creating prosperity and jobs at home, and at the same time getting all of these other countries out of the tentacles of a thug like Putin.
How concerned are you about the Department of Homeland Security and the NSA spying and everything else?
Oh, very. I mean, again, I've already lived in a place that spied on its citizens. I've already lived in a place that intimidated and harassed its opponents into silence only for disagreeing. And now we've brought that very same concept to America.
Explain, though,
dissidents in America.
Igor, explain this. People say all the time, I'm not doing anything wrong. What difference does it make if they have all my emails and everything else?
Scary, Glenn, because that's what they used to tell us in the Soviet Union. Well, if you've done nothing wrong, you have nothing to fear. If you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. Remember that?
I didn't live through it. I've seen it in movies. You lived through it, but
yeah. But the scary thing is, this all-powerful government loses its benevolence very quickly, and so many civilizations, so many people have learned that on their hides. I only hope, God help us if we have to learn that stuff by experience.
Now, Igor,
so I'll fight it tooth and nail.
If people are agreeing with what they're hearing here, and I can't imagine they're not, how could they possibly help you in your campaign? I mean, is there any way where somebody in like not where you are could possibly donate to you? How would that be accomplished?
Well, I've got a website, www.igorberman.com. Imagine that in the 21st century.
Igorberman.com. Is that BIRMAN?
BIRMAN. And I tell you something, I really need the help because Doug Ossie is rattled. He realizes that his liberal record is not going to play well with the voters. So he just put $250,000 of his own money into his campaign. He's a very, very wealthy guy.
Well, why don't you put $250,000 of your own money in?
Gosh, exploded during his tenure in Congress. So I need all the help I can get to match that.
Igor, did I hear that you said earlier that you were chief of staff for Tom McClintock?
I was for 5 years.
It's an interesting thing, and McClintock does not get enough credit. This is a guy. If you remember him in California, he ran for governor in the Schwarzenegger election and finished third.
Yeah, he was actually the one that California should have elected.
And he went back, and he's been in Congress now. He's been voting correctly. I think has a 97% lifetime Freedom Works rating. And it's interesting to see you're running against a guy who ran against McClintock back in the day.
I was on that campaign, and Doug spent $5.5 million of his own money to try to defeat Tom, and we only raised $1.5 million, and we beat Doug by 16 points. Because again, when you vote for higher taxes, bigger government, more power to the EPA, amnesty, the voters tend not to like it.
I'm interested, though, Igor, in that the biggest worry of people in our audience when they have a new candidate on the air is that you'll sound great on this show, and then you'll go to Washington and let us down. And it's happened over and over again, not with everybody, but many. You know what I like about Igor? Well, this is what I like about Igor. Same reason I like Ted Cruz. Former Soviet Union. Ted Cruz, dad from Cuba. You got to understand. I'm telling you, you understand it. When you're one generation away, when you were a kid and you witnessed it, or your father raised you and was like, listen up, boy. I mean, our parents raised us to be frugal. When we were kids, they were frugal because their parents went through the Great Depression. We've lost it. But when you're one generation out from it, these guys are pit bulls. They won't. Out of everybody, I trust the people who have actually been and lived under the Soviet Union or under the thumb of Marxism. At least their parents did. You get to your grandparents, I don't trust you again. But you or your parents, if you saw it, there's no way they didn't tuck you into bed. Tell me, Igor, they didn't tuck you into bed at night telling you about America and what freedom really could be like.
Glenn, I'll never forget one thing, and this is burnt into my brain. The few days before we left for America, the Russian secret police searched our apartment to scare us, to intimidate us. So all of our belongings that we had packed away, they're all over the carpet. Just imagine a scene of utter chaos. And my brother was very little, and he was really upset. And then my mom pulled him real close to him, hugged him, and said, Eugene, son, don't be upset, don't cry. In just a few days, we go to America, and this will never happen there. And that was set solely on faith that in a free society, in a society based on liberty, such abuses are impossible. Of course, then we passed the Patriot Act.
Igor Birman, running for Congress, California, 7th District. He needs your help. If he sounds like somebody that you can support, I want you to go to Igor Birman, IGORBIRMAN, IgorBirman.com, and donate. These guys, there's a few. And if we can get the real warriors in, we really have. These are the guys we prayed for. These are the guys we begged for. They're here. If they don't get in, it is on our shoulders. We have to do whatever it is we can do. And if it means $5 or, $500, or if it means I don't, but I'll make phone calls, or whatever it is our responsibility because we begged for these guys. Igor, all my best, and we will hopefully meet you soon here in the studios because I'd like to sit down with you and talk.
Glenn, I look forward to it very much.
Thank you very much. You bet.